Hello, madam.
Can you hear
Hello.
me?
Yes, please.
Oh, wonderful. I want to apologize for coming late. I was just picking up my daughter from school. And so yeah, so this is but I'm set and ready to share with you this evening. Is everybody ready? Yeah, Martha, you are ready for sure. So, for this session, I'm going to use a presentation, so which I will slide. I'm gonna share with you, so you'll be able to see the slides with me. And throughout the session today, I'll be interacting with you. I need some interaction, everybody. So, and that part will be there'll be a prompt, there'll be within the presentation for Q&A. And so that's when I'll take questions relating to that particular topic that I would have shared so that the questions are not compounded into the last section or like at the end so that you have time to actually more with what you're hearing and we can reflect a little bit more. So I hope it will still be within the time that has been allocated. But if we run over, please be patient with me. And it's also because I want you to receive so much from what I'll be sharing with you that I want you to go with understanding. It's not just receiving information, but I want you to wrestle with what is actually being shared and we can come together and share some great ideas. Is that great? Is that a wonderful plan, everybody? Yeah, I see. Thank you. Yeah, some thumbs up and stuff. Okay, so as I'm going to share the screen, I would not be able to see you all. So when it comes to the question and answers, unmute yourself. If try to not overspeak each other, but I'll take maybe one or two questions and I'll answer. But yeah, so you'll be able to unmute yourself, but I'll be looking at exactly what you'll be seeing. Okay, so here we go. So can everybody see that?
Yes, madam, we can see.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Great. All right. So this is module four, and it's wonderful that you've made it so far. This is the fourth session, and so I'm happy to be hosting you today and presenting this module, which is about relationships and purpose, which is, and with that, we're going to look at alignment for global influence, the whole point of why relationships are, and purpose. So, a little bit about myself. I don't know what has been shared so far. So, welcome to you all because we all in different time zones. So, whether it's in morning, afternoon, or evening, good evening to you all. So, I want to thank Richard for inviting me to be able to share with you on this platform with this message. And I'm honored to be here. And I also want to honor Mark Charlie Foundation for organizing this event and this summit. Is so wonderful to be able to come together where we can share ideas, learn from one another, and grow. And so, my name, as you know, is Sheila Nakiliza. And my work sits at the intersection of leadership, culture, and what I often call inner governance, and the unseen frameworks that shape how leaders think, decide, and build. So this is more the inner framing of a person. And I work with emerging and established leaders across different sectors. As I live here in the UK, specifically London, I've worked in all kinds of places. And one of the places that has allowed me to have such a great contact with people is through hospitality, working in luxury hotels, five-star hotels. I met many people from different parts of the world, different um, departments of leadership, and it's wonderful. And even myself, the experiences that I've had, I'm now able to share with you. So, and because of that, the different people from across different sectors, we're going to look at how identity, values, and alignment affect influence, and not just in moments of success, but over time. So all my experiences I'm going to bring to you so that we can bring all that experiences in bringing these values to you. So the introduction about and the mission for this session is it focuses on relationships and purpose, and in particular on alignment. So who walks with you, who we learn from, so the person that you will be learning, who the people you learn from, and how we collaborate in a world that is rapidly changing. I don't know about you, but if you look at the news and you talk to people, things are changing. What we thought was only, was normal, things are changing so rapidly, and we need to be able to adjust, to see how we can adjust with them. So throughout history, leaders who endured were not always the loudest, but those who understood systems and without losing their inner compass. So we need to understand that even though everything's changing around us, we as people, those that we can look at in history or as examples that really endured and whose leadership we now admire, is because they didn't lose focus of who they were. However, as things changed, they were able to adapt. So we'll draw from ancient wisdom and historical leadership examples to explore how alignment shapes sustainable influence. Let me see if you can all see that. Oh, a moment. So this session also prepares the ground for the next module, which is module 5 next week, when I'll be able to share with you on Wednesday, where we'll explore how purpose is translated into work and societal impact. So this is important. There's no need for us to know what our purpose is and getting all these strategies if we're not able to practically implement them in the areas of our influence. So we need to be able to translate that work and societal impact. So definitely come next week, because it's going to go deeper into what the foundations I'm going to lay tonight. So next week's one is going to look at how vision moves from intention to contribution, and that's very important. So for now, we begin with alignment. And because how we build is always shaped by who we build with. This is very important. So relationships and purpose, alignment for global influence through wisdom, integrity, and influence. See, relationships are the primary context in which purpose is discovered, okay? It is through which also it is tested and refined. So no purpose exists in isolation. I feel like I need to emphasize that, especially in these times where people are creating businesses or starting things. And if we almost see from social media or these multi-million moguls that have made it, and there's this kind of understanding that they've made it by themselves. They're self-made millionaires. And actually, when you go down to it and do a little further research about them, it's not true, because they usually have people behind them that support them. So we're going to look at that. So leadership and purpose does not exist in isolation. It is always revealed, shaped, and expressed through connections with others. So that's why they're supported. They have a support network. It's just that they never talk about them. And that can actually lead to false misunderstandings in thinking that we can do things all by ourselves. So from the earliest stages of development, and we talked about this, I think, in the first session about when I asked the question, like at what age does development or leadership develop or leadership starts? And you all gave some great answers. And here I was smiling, in fact, when I heard you all talk. It started from childhood and that kind of stuff. It was really wonderful, because I had already written this module when you all shared. So I was smiling because you were mentioning what I actually wrote. So from the earliest stages of development, children discover who they are through interaction, feedback, and shared experiences. So this could be with their family members, their siblings, their friends, and things like that. So this is where they begin those early development. So, and purpose matures not in solitude. It really does not, but in relationships where ideas are challenged, values are clarified, and direction is shaped, is sharpened. So when relationships are misaligned, so this is when we do not connect. You meet people, some people, and there can be something going on. Oh, it could have started well, and then there's something that happens that causes a misalignment. So when there's a misalignment in there, even the clear purpose becomes distorted and ineffective. And ambition may remain strong. So, in the group with the idea, let's say like in an organization, they've come together under a vision and everybody was okay going with it. But along the way, something happened that created a distortion between that, within the purpose of the vision. And so these here, even though the leaders might try to push forward the purpose of the organization, it actually is that the impact becomes unstable. So even though there's a lot of energy to cause it to be successful, the output would not work. There'll be problems in there in what is actually produced in the end. So global influence is not produced by vision alone. So if we are to look at it like we are, let's say, I believe last week somebody said they wanted their business to be the most successful business in Zambia. And that's a wonderful vision. Honestly, that's really wonderful, and it's really encouraging to hear that you have such bold faith to believe that. And nothing is impossible. That's the whole point. It's just that for us to navigate and to get to those levels of thinking, we need to understand that to get there, it is not produced by vision alone, but by wisdom, integrity, and relational alignment working together. And so those who carry influence over time are those whose inner convictions, relational environments, and outward actions remain coherent and integrated. So this is important, that even though we want all of that, we gotta work, first of all, stabilize what is internally in us. So why is alignment important? Why does it matter? It matters because purpose determines direction. So we know that if, by Richard's example last week, that if a person wants to be a doctor, they would have a strategy as to how to get there. So they will work on A to get to B to get to C. They'll have a plan. So that'll be, let's say, the purpose is to become a doctor. And so, it gives that person who has a vision of what they want to achieve a sense of direction. But alignment determines whether that direction can be sustained over time. So many leaders do not fail because they lack vision or ability, but because their relationships, their values, and decisions are not moving in the same direction. So a person who's wanting to become a doctor, along the way, it could be that relationally, perhaps people that were funding their school fees, let's say it's a child, or and the parents were funding their school fees, there becomes relational issues, or maybe the values, they're not disciplined in doing the work that it takes to become a doctor, or their decision making, instead of doing their work and studying, they're out in the clubs, they're partying, they're not sleeping well, they're eating terribly, so these things have an impact on that direction of reaching the goals of the purpose. So when alignment is absent, progress becomes fragmented and longevity is compromised. Okay. And so, by example, we look at this in a historical context. So how history shows us is that many civilizations possessed vision, power, and reach, yet collapsed when internal alignment fractured. So this is like on a huge national scale. So those that are seeking to be presidents, national leaders, or, so we gotta think of this. We gotta study these types of leadership, because also being a president or being a national leader is a big responsibility. So, but I'm using these examples to help us to process, like leadership can start from the individual to as big as being a national leader. And this is how we can look at history in its lessons and the wisdom that we can learn from the ancients. So history shows us that many civilizations possessed vision, power, and reach, yet they collapsed when internal alignment fragmented. See, empires such as the ancient Babylon, which is here on your left with the wonderful artwork that was depicted here. I looked at that, I was like, it's nice. So ancient Babylon and the Roman Empire, which is here on the right with the Colosseum, which is also very beautiful. It's a beautiful image. And, the Roman Empire, they all rose with power, but they fell when values, leadership, and people stopped moving together. Along the way, something happened. And so this is the issue that we're dealing with. And so what was the patterns, very briefly, on what I discovered about these two empires? And it's not even limited to just these two, but these are quite big for us to realize how their existence impacted global societies and how leadership is developed in nations. So the pattern behind the collapse here is that the civilizations rarely collapse from external attack alone. In the case of these two empires, they weaken normally internally long before the fall is publicly seen. So it is the internal misalignment that is taking place that then eventually publicly it is displayed. So it is corruption which replaces character. So a lot of these leaders, the emperors, and they were corrupted. They become corrupted during their leadership, and so it replaced their good character. And so division replaced the shared purpose. So people within those fractions where people had different ideas what to do, how should the nation go, and so these divisions, they fractured their shared purpose, and that brought about also the shaking, the internal shaking, and power became detached from their responsibility. So it was no longer about empowering the nation and building the nation to be successful. Power became self-indulgent. So it's about what the leader could receive from the nation for themselves and for their family or whatever, and for themselves, rather than empowering the nation to thrive and grow. So when alignment fractures, decline accelerates. So we gotta understand that when we see this in nations, we will know that eventually it will lead to collapse. So when alignment is absent, progress becomes fragmented and longevity is compromised. So here, energy is spent managing tensions instead of building impact. So a leader of a nation, in this example that I gave, they're no longer focused on what we can do to bring the nation to a place of prosperity. But they become so energized in breaking fractions, dealing with tensions that are going on within. And if we bring this into companies, we can see that with the managers become busy dealing with humans and the issues that they have. And so over time, misalignment erodes trust, it removes clarity, and creates resistance. And removes, over time, misalignment erodes trust, clarity, and resilience. So people no longer have patience to be able to deal with what is going on. Perhaps they're wanting it to change a certain way, but it's taking too long. So resilience becomes an issue. And so alignment matters because it protects leaders from internal contradiction and allows purpose to be expressed with consistency and strength across seasons. So we need to understand that the importance of alignment, even though it is not systematic in the sense that we can understand it, it can be quite difficult to sustain if it is not, it could be quite difficult to sustain an organization or a nation or for the leader to be able to do what they want to do within that organization because of these fractures. So we're gonna look at that. So now I think I saw some questions there in the chat or something. So this is a question and answer section. So we've just finished this area here now, looking at relationships and looking at alignment. So if anybody has a question, please pop in and unmute yourself, and I'll clarify anything you may have questions about. Yeah, I'm not able to see your question, so if anybody wants to ask, just unmute yourself. Otherwise, I will just continue. Okay, I think everybody is okay to go.
Question. Sorry,
Ah,
madam. Sorry.
yes. Mm.
So my question is, how can someone clearly identify like whether a relationship is truly aligned with their purpose, or especially when emotions are involved?
Sorry, say that again. I couldn't hear that
Like,
clearly.
how can someone clearly identify whether a relationship is truly aligned with their purpose, especially when emotions are involved?
Yeah, oh, that's a very, very good question. And in fact, it is one of the um, things that bring a lot of division and concern in organizations and makes it very difficult for leaders to fulfill the goal of their vision and within an organization. So when there is a fracture, how do you be able to recognize? So sometimes it could be now you as a leader need to be able to discern whether the emotions are, I would say, which is not in here, but I think next week I'll be able to deal a little bit more about how to handle people. But the when it's with people and they're difficult, now as a leader, you need to have certain levels of intelligence that will help you to navigate those difficult things. You need to take back and reflect on whether now if this person are they reacting emotionally because they they just don't want to do this particular thing or they don't want to move on. It's really, in fact, instead of first analyze the situation, think about what had happened, and then ask yourself a few questions. Is it because that they're not happy, they're not fulfilled, or is there something going wrong? So once you've done that internal reflection, you then take that person and sit them down and have those difficult conversations with them. It's difficult for leaders, honestly. I totally understand, to be able to talk to somebody, especially when they're emotional, because it can be difficult. You're dealing with their emotions and also telling them the truth of what needs to do, what needs to be done. Because as a leader, you need to find a balance between understanding and being compassionate toward your staff or whoever is aligned with you, but also staying focused in your vision and your purpose and making sure that everybody is moving together. So having that dialogue with the person will significantly help you understand what is actually going on. So then I've often found, in fact, this was the situation that happened in reality. I was at a working at an event. I was working as a manager there, and we had a lot of problems with some of the staff that was going on. And the leadership had seen that the people are just not working. They're lazy, they're complaining all the time, and things like that. And so when I came in to support the general management, they had a perception of what they thought was happening, and when I went to talk to the staff, they were telling me other things, and I realized the two had not connected. They had not sat down and spoken to each other about what was going on. So because the leadership was very busy, and me as a manager now came into a situation, what I could do is help to understand and bring any solutions that would help. And so it ended up being that the staff felt unseen. They felt like they were not being acknowledged for their hard work and things like that. And so this was what was bringing all the emotional frustrations, the angers, everybody back talking. They were so mean to one another and talking so badly about the leadership. And so I explained that to the leadership, and I said, no, you know what, I know you're busy, but you need to meet these people halfway. You need to be able to feed back to them and tell them, well done, thank you for this, thank you for that. Even though for her, the management was, it was something that was taking a lot of time for them. They literally did not want to deal with that, but I had to help them understand that you need to be able to talk to these people. In order to take them where you want the business to go, you need to come to their level and understand them. And I also needed to help the staff to understand, actually, you also need to understand that the leader has their own role to do and cannot come to be babysitting you, but you need to meet them halfway. So if there's any problems, you need to be able to communicate. Talk to one another. Your adults talk to one another, and it ended up coming to a wonderful resolution. So it takes work. It really does take work, and a lot of times as a leader, it's about you confronting your own insecurities also, because it could be that they either you've heard things that they've said about yourself and you don't want to talk to them. You're angry with them. They made you so upset that you're thinking, well, I can't. So yeah. So I hope that made sense.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, we'll move on because I gave quite a big, long explanation. So yeah, so with a very wonderful question, thank you so much. So, and here we are now. So we move to the law of adaptive intelligence. So influence is not the result of chance. So in order to influence the people or in your organization, or whether it's to influence the world, because we're looking at global influence. So here, influence is not the result of chance. It never is. It's not about luck, or that person has luck, they're successful because they're lucky or whatever. People associate success with an influence. So it is not about about chance, but of awareness, adaptability, and understanding. See, intelligent leadership, and this is what I mentioned earlier, is marked by the ability to recognize change and interpret its meaning and respond with wisdom rather than fear. So instead of reverting back to what could be your safe mode, you're able to actually intellectually discern. Tabo, Tabo,
Yes.
can you please mute yourself? Thank you. So throughout history, those who shaped societies understood how systems worked and how seasons changed and how people were formed. So you really have to be intellectually sound in your leadership. It's not just a matter of you have a vision and you're just going to bring people towards that and move them. You have to be multifaceted in your thinking. And so you need to really become intellectual and challenge yourself. So and we can see this in the leadership of history, that throughout those that were able and those that we are able to talk about historically understood, they understood the societies that they were in. They understood how the systems worked that they were in, so which they influenced, and how seasons changed. And when those seasons changed, they were able to move with momentum and with clarity. And also they were very good at knowing people. They had an emotional intelligence on how to handle and deal with people. And so that is a whole art of itself. So sustained influence belongs to those who can respond wisely to change rather than resist it. So change is inevitable. That's something I believe everybody should understand, but it's about how we handle it, whether we'll do well in it or not. And when leaders fail to adapt internally, so if they resist that change that's come, whether emotionally, intellectually, or ethically, they are eventually overtaken externally by changing systems and realities. So if they refuse to change, the systems or the changes that are going around them will cause them to actually face the reality, because everything else has changed, and they'll end up not succeeding. So adaptive intelligence allows leaders to remain relevant, grounded, and effective even as the environment evolves. So we need to understand that adaptability is essential. So adaptation is not compromise. So it's not about somebody is behaving a certain way, and in order to adapt, I'm gonna let it pass. So their misbehavior, I would just say, you know what, just for the sake of peace, I'm gonna leave it. Let me just ignore. No, because what if you don't deal with it in that moment, it will bring problems later on. So it's not compromise. Compromise will be that to leave a change, whether good. If it's good, then we can see how you can grow into it. But if it's a bad change, it needs addressing, and especially if it goes against your vision and your purpose. So adaptation is not a compromise. It is a discipline, awareness. And most effective leaders preserve core identity while adjusting method and strategy. So this is important, that you can bring changes around you in your organization, in your purpose, like in the path in which your purpose is being fulfilled, but don't change the integrity of who you are. Don't compromise on yourself in what you began with, the values that you have. So internal rigidity eventually produces external irrelevance. So if any resistance in that, if there is any resistance internally, because I know I am doing things, I've done it this way, I would never do it again. I'm sure you've met people like that are so set in their ways. They would not consider anything or any form of transformation or something new. They reject change. And so those types of people that have an internal rigidity eventually produce external irrelevance. They become insignificant. Nobody will need them anymore. Maybe they'll start talking, oh, back in my day, they have stories to tell of how successful they were, but they're no longer relevant in the now. So systems evolve, systems shift, but influence survives through discernment, not stubbornness. Yeah. So Albert Einstein said, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. So I hope that's motivation for some. And so alignment shapes destiny. And this is important. This is the section now we're moving into. The trajectory of a leader's life is shaped by the relationships they consistently walk with. So relationships are not neutral. Never think of that. They influence thinking patterns, values, and decision-making processes over time. So imagine, especially this is very common with, actually let me use it because we're grown-ups, so let me use an example that is more mature. So imagine a couple that are married, and let's say a lady has some male friends, and she knows in history there was something with one of them, right? And so within that context, she's married, but she knows there was a history. She's not told her husband, but then they talk. The talk is very fluid, it's very ambiguous as to where the boundaries are. Eventually, if that lady, her friends, if they're wise enough, they tell her, you should cut that relationship off. But if that lady now thinks that she's okay, nothing will happen, very most certain something will happen eventually, because the conversations that she would be having with that ex will not be just simple conversation. She'll be going extra, leaning into that person's arms in a different way, conversations that she should not be having. So over time, that relationship has an influence on her marriage. And over time, that marriage, we would not be surprised if they end up in divorce. So relationships are very important. The people you connect with are very important because they shape your thinking patterns, values, and decision-making processes over time. And then also, if for a successful relationship, or those that are really good, so from somebody who perhaps is struggling with some things, meets somebody who's competent and is able to, and they partner themselves with them, and they can build great things together. So these are the partnerships and relationships we need and need to cultivate. So those who are surrounded by clarity tend to grow in clarity, and while those surrounded by confusion often struggle to sustain direction. So they're equal. They're very, so the ones that hang out with those that are not, that have confusion and lack direction, lack any type of integrity, those friendships will lead to that. In that direction. But if one partners themselves with people that have vision, clarity, and understanding and wisdom, they themselves will become that. So it's important that relationships are very essential. They're not just neutral. So alignment in relationships creates reinforcement rather than resistance. And so when values, vision, and character are shared, leaders experience stability even under pressure. So when life comes or business issues arise, there are people you can call that will be able to encourage you in your path. That will be able to encourage you, even support you in ways that you would not otherwise if you didn't have them. So this is very important. Destiny is not shaped in isolated moments. It is not. We are not. There are moments here we can have where we are by ourselves to reflect on things, but it is essential that we have the right support systems around us. But by repeated relational choices that either strengthen or weaken the path ahead. So we got to make sure that the relationships and the people we call upon in those times of trials in our lives are those that will actually help us to sustain, to become better, to grow. But otherwise, it will cause us to lose direction. So any questions on this section? Yes, Martha.
Thank you for the opportunity, madam. I
That's
would like
okay.
to find out. I would like to find out, madam, when it comes to relationships, like the way you are explaining. There are situations where sometimes, as we are relating with others in our leadership journey, sometimes you feel connected to certain people, but then sometimes you won't feel connected to certain people. What I mean is, for example, the presence of others, you feel safe, but in the presence of others, you have some doubts. So is that where discernment comes in, or how can you help me understand that? Thank you.
Yes, wonderful question, Martha. And it is important to actually highlight that because we all face that. Um, Definitely. So the people we tend to get on with are people that share a lot with our value purpose, like they, and that's where we're getting that synergy. We're getting that alive moment. They're the type of friends that you really would want to be around, to give you that strength when you need it, and even to inspire you to get better. But then, yeah, in within your organization, there could be those difficult relationships. I would say take time definitely to discern, and but discernment takes observation. So if it is not obvious, so oftentimes like the triggers, especially if you're an intuitive person, it can be that they're smiling, they're happy, they greet you well, they everything is fine, but internally there's something not right. There's, you could feel that there's something not going on. Discernment will allow time to reveal itself, because eventually something will happen that will cause your internal alarms, to give explanation as to why you felt like that. But then if it is the case that externally, like you definitely don't get on with this person, or they don't get on with you, and they're difficult to deal with, so instruction is given to them and they're not listening, they're not doing them, well, I would suggest again, talk to them, see if you can talk to them and say, what is going on here that is causing you to be like this? And also self-examine. It could be your own, because you're not getting on with them, or you feel like there maybe there's something off with them, you withdraw from them because of that. And so you gotta see, you internalize and see, is it me? Am I doing something that, am I perhaps not giving them a chance? Or is it that actually there is something and behaviors that they've done that I'm just not agreeing with, and I need to see what's going on? And it could be also personality clashes, definitely that, because we all think differently and we process things differently. Some people need time to think, other people can come up with ideas straight away, other people can, they need time to ask questions, to think about what they're going to ask. Other people come up with the question straight away. So as a leader, you need to be so flexible in your understanding of the people that you're with, so that you're able to lead them right. So let's say, for example, you have a team of mixed personalities. Somebody likes talking all the time, they're interrupting everybody, so you as a leader need to be that neutral person that when questions come, you're able to keep the person who talks a lot too much, at boundaries, and then allow the quiet ones to be able to speak. And oftentimes they tend to have a lot of great ideas. So, you need to be able to understand. And being a leader, you need to understand your people. You're not just going with the vision and just bringing people along and you're just throwing them in the line, follow me. It's not by force. If you can come to a point of being relatable with them and they understand you, these things bring trust. There's a point at which now that their resistance can actually become an advantage. And understanding their personality and what makes them tick, it could be that there are things that maybe perhaps they're not feeling felt, they're not heard, they feel like they're not being heard, like in the example I gave. So it's important to address the underlying root. But if it is that everything is okay, but somehow you have something going on that is just not right, is that intuition, give it time, because eventually it will reveal itself. Is that okay with you, Martha?
Yes, thank you very much, madam.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And so any more questions before I move on? Okay. So now we're going to look at networking. So the strategy of proximity. So networking is not the accumulation of contacts. When I go to events and they say, oh, there's going to be an opportunity for networking. As an introvert, I am an introvert. I'm like, oh, I hate it because it feels weird. You get to meet people and it's like you're being forced to say, hey, give me your number. Like it's weird. It feels like very transactional. So this is where I want to kind of remove that facade of what it is, because it is that way most of the time. But I want to be able to share the real root of why networking is very important and why it's essential for your purpose and for you to succeed. So networking is not an accumulation of contacts. So it doesn't matter whether you've gone to a conference and you've collected 200 contacts. All of that is worthless but if you change the way you see it, that actually networking is proximity to people who expand perspective and open access to systems, then you have a different way you're going to look at it and how you move. So every leader operates within networks. We all have people we're connected with, right? We all do. And so whether intentionally formed or unconsciously inherited, we have these networks of people. And these networks shape exposure to ideas, opportunities, influence long before formal authority is gained. Yeah, so these networks, all of them have a purpose, but they have to be strategically understood, what their purposes are and how you can use them for your expansion. And so when networks are formed without discernment, so let's say you've gone and you met people and some of them you like, as Martha's example, some you don't, but you see, their skill is going to be helpful for this and that. It is important to remember that still, even the ones that you really like, that there's a reason for it. It's not just because I like that person, they were just so like this and I thought, let me swap numbers. It shouldn't be like that. Be measured in giving out your details or connecting with people, because remember what I said earlier, those relationships will shape your thinking, your decisions. So be careful of who you attach yourself to and who attaches to you. So when networks are formed without discernment, purpose becomes diluted and direction loses precision. So this is very interesting and very important for us to understand. Strategic proximity allows leaders to learn how systems function and where influence flows. So when you're connected with somebody, don't just get to know them because of the great things they've done. Try to understand the network that they have and understand the systems that they bring with you. And even for you, the networks you're bringing in that relationship, so it's not just that what they bring in. You have also value that you're presenting to those people. So it needs to be a mutual understanding of connectivity. So strategic proximity allows leaders to learn how systems function and where influence flows. So intentional networking accelerates growth while protecting leaders from unnecessary distractions. So this is why I was saying that your connections with people should be strategic. Not to say, I don't want to talk to that person because, I prefer talking. No. It's not with rudeness, but it's with elegance and class, so you can be welcoming and accepting of people. But when they say, let's swap details, you're thinking to yourself, there are some questions you need to ask yourself before you make that connection. Are they aligned with what I'm going? Or do they have a purpose that aligns with mine? Is there a purpose to this connection? You gotta have those internal dialogues in order to see whether this network is actually worth having. So wise leaders learn to evaluate networks not by visibility, but by influence on thought and direction. So not every connection deserves equal access, and not every opportunity aligns with long-term purpose. So discernment in networking protects leaders from exertion, and misplaced loyalty. Okay, and that's important, actually, misplaced loyalty, because we can be so committed, especially when it's like close people, whether it's family or friends, especially that we've known for years. We can feel like, I need to still support this person or help them because whatever reasons, because there's an emotional attachment to that. But you need to be strategic in discerning whether actually is this true loyalty or not. So this is where I mean by misplaced loyalty. So strategic proximity, therefore, is sustained when relationships are chosen with clarity rather than impulse. So the impulse will be like, oh my gosh, I love how they are, how they, so you get that good vibe with them, and it's like, yeah, I just want to, go and connect with them. That could be a good thing sometimes, but also a bad thing, because you don't know what they're bringing with them. So yeah, it's important. This one's a nice and short one. So any questions? Are we good? Let me get a thumbs up if we're good, and I can move on to the next section. We good? Yes, Martha, well done. Thank you. So mentorship, which is wisdom transfer. Okay. So I'm sure you've all heard about the importance of mentorship, and we're thinking how we're going to do this, how we're going to connect with people. Like, I want to make sure I'm mentored by that person. And again, going back to networking, always be careful of who you connect yourself with, because they will shape your thinking, your direction, and how you make your decisions. So mentorship, though, however, when done well, shortens the journey by transferring insights that cannot be gained through experience alone. And those of you that have, because we're already in families, we have this already. We do this with our children. We mentor them in how to live life a certain way. So we are in a way mentoring them. But in a leadership capacity, we as leaders also, even though we are leaders, we also need mentorship. A lot of times, I don't know what happens to leaders. I think once they establish something, they think, oh, I don't need to be taught. Nobody can tell me, and it becomes very difficult to correct them or to guide them, because they feel like they know it. So, and this is important, that not only can we mentor others as leaders, but also we need to submit ourselves under a mentorship. But that can come in many forms. It doesn't mean a direct mentorship with the person. Now we can do things like this through Zoom, and there's technologies that we can do that. But also books, books are great sources of mentorship. I'll be able to share some of the ones that I would recommend a little bit later on. And it's important. Mentorship is not limited to just being able to talk to a person. You can buy audiobooks, you can buy books, read articles. These are shaping your thinking, remember? And the connections, the networking is that the relationships are shaping your thought processes. So this is important. Yeah, don't dismiss it. So don't feel bad if you don't have a mentor person, because you can gain mentorship in many different ways. So mentorship shortens the journey. Yeah, so you don't have to go through those life experiences and the years that it would take to gain that wisdom. So those who have navigated complexity carry wisdom forged through pressure. So you see here, you're gaining wisdom that they had to suffer through, and you're getting it through a conversation. You're getting it through a story. You're getting through books that they've written. All of these things are very important, and mentorship is very valuable, and I hope you'll understand and take that on board as one of your tools of development. And so so to just carry on, so those that have navigated complexity carry wisdom forged through pressure. Their failures become lessons, right? And endurance, they teach you how to grow and continue enduring even in those moments of suffering. So access to such wisdom provides clarity and perspective that saves time and prevents unnecessary loss. So in business, those that are into stock market things, and it's essential to learn from those that have made the monies and all this kind of stuff, so you know where the pitfalls are. And also one thing I gotta let you know is that success has its own pitfalls. When people are on a poverty or survival mode, when people are in survival mode, is always they can have a vision of, I wish I had a bigger house, I wish I had a better car, I wish I had, oh man, those people have it easy, you have it easy. They can do that comparison and think that actually they don't know the sufferings that the person that is up there that they're admiring the battles that they're facing. So we need to take that into perspective when we're looking at people that are our mentors. So when they're teaching us things, we're not coming with that spirit of self-righteousness, but we're coming in a position of submission. So true mentorship, true mentors do more than encourage. They correct you, they refine you, and they prepare leaders for responsibility. And this is very important, responsibility. Leaders who remain teachable grow in discernment and maturity. So this is important. That's their role to be able to do. So they will do that in us when we submit to their leadership or their thought patterns and processes. And also when we become mentors to others, that the whole point of that is so that we can bring them to a place of discernment and maturity. That is the purpose of it. So it's not being friends. So mentorship forms character alongside competence. So somebody can have a skill, but if they don't have character alongside it, it will not be benefiting them, because they'll be successful in the gift that they have, but the character will bring them down. And it's a very painful experience. So ensuring that patterns, that growth, so mentorship ensures that growth is sustainable rather than superficial. Okay. So mentorship requires humility as much as it requires access. So even if we have access to certain people, we gotta be humble with that connection, that relationship. We gotta nurture it. So we cannot just take it for granted, because access can be revoked. And so growth therefore slows when leaders, I mentioned it, as leaders, our growth can slow down if if we resist correction or seek affirmation without accountability. So this is a lot in people that are gifted. They might start choosing who they listen to, who mentors them. So when somebody comes and brings listen, maybe we can adjust things here in the way you spoke, in the way I can hear that your heart is not right. Those type of things, when those are mentors, somebody is sharing something with us that helps us to grow. But if a person, their character isn't developed or matured, they could take that on, they could resist that advice and seek others who would just say, you know what, it's okay, like, you're gifted, why are you listening to them? Do they know you are, But this is what causes great people to fall, because they're surrounded with networks of people that are not actually in support of their vision, in their well-being, and this eventually will cause them to fail. So we need accountability. It's essential, especially in this global world and community. We need that. And so the willingness to be shaped determines how much wisdom can be received. Okay, let me say that again, because it's very important. The willingness to be shaped determines how much wisdom can be received. So the amount of wisdom we receive depends on our posture before our mentor, or the amount of wisdom a person can receive from us is determined by the posture of their heart before us. So it's a responsibility both on the mentor to the mentee, and also the mentee to the mentor. It's a relationship that has to have a mutual respect. So leaders who honor mentorship create space for long-term development rather than short-term validation. So I see it a lot when courses on things are done, and people claim, oh, come, I'll be your mentor, and they teach people 6 months, I'm going to teach you this, and that's it, you qualify. It's not the case. True mentorship takes time, because you're forming a person. You're transforming thought processes, patterns, behavioral things, and they're coming with a history of experiences that now to shape them more, to renew their thinking, will take time, because it took them that many years to develop the thought process they have come to you. And so even ourselves. So when we go to a mentor and we want to be mentored by them, they need to have patience with us, to allow that in their mentorship over us, we'll take time, we'll need time to grow and to process. So it is important, that this process is a long term, not short. So any questions? Is it Tokozani? Tokozani. I guess you don't want to talk. Does anybody have a question? Okay, so we shall move on to the next within time. We're within time. We're almost done. So collaboration, now this is important. This is the last part, I believe, of this section. So collaboration, strength through unity. This is important, another important topic. So no lasting influence is built in isolation. Remember what I mentioned earlier? I mentioned that no lasting influence is built in isolation. Collaboration multiplies capacity by bringing together diverse strengths, perspectives, and skills. So when collaboration is grounded in shared values, it produces resilience rather than competition and unity rather than fragmentation. Okay. So aligned collaboration protects leaders from burnout and narrow vision. Okay. And so shared purpose allows work to be distributed without losing coherence. And influence then becomes strong when it is carried collectively rather than carried in isolation. Granted, at the beginning when you're starting something, there's a stage in which you begin really by yourself and you're doing everything by yourself. But then there comes a point in which whatever you are building develops a new layer where you now start to connect with people that are for you, that have skills and abilities that can build your can come together towards your purpose and the vision that you have. And this is where now you need to use the previous segments of this session to use together, to bring together a network of people. So you understanding that you bring in skills, you bring in new perspectives. So when you are in the meeting, I believe it was Martha that questioned about the conflict of with another person. So when you around this table, let's say this as in this example, and you're finding that people are having different feedback, they're sharing different things, they're bringing their own perspective. And so you as a leader need to be able to pull out on which one and what everybody's saying that actually goes with the vision and the purpose. So it is your role to be able to understand that they all bring these myriad of attributable skills, abilities, gifts, so they're rich with all these things, but you are responsible to making sure that it all works well. And so influence then becomes strong when it is carried collectively rather than carried alone. So that's the benefit of being networked with people and having the right people next to you. So healthy collaboration is sustained through clarity of roles. It is essential. In a team, you have to know who's doing what. And if that's the case, then make sure that that person is doing that thing and everybody else knows that that particular issue is to be dealt with that person. Otherwise, there will be misunderstandings. The person who has the role, let's say, for example, there's the financier person, the accountant in the organization. They come and have their presentation, but in a meeting, somebody thinks they know better than the accountant, and all these voices start to come in. At the end of the day, the leader has to ensure that the accountant has the full view of this. There can be the collaborations or contributions to the insight, but at the end of the day, when it comes to the finances of the organization, it is the accountant that has the authority on that. So without alignment, collaboration becomes a source of tension rather than strength. So we have to be careful with that. So leaders must discern not only who they work with, but how and why they work together. Okay, so you need to understand these elements. Why are they there? Why are we working together? And how? And so all of these have to be internalized and then be able to share with the group if that's the case, so that everybody knows with clarity what is actually going on. So when collaboration is grounded in purpose, and that's the whole point, the how and why, always reminding your team why we are here, what is the purpose of this meeting, or the purpose of the vision. You have to continuously reiterate this with them so they don't lose focus. That's why a lot of companies tend to come together at the beginning of every year. They do a casting vision. They do a vision cast where they talk to their teams to bring them back into alignment of why they're there, to thank them for the previous year, but also to bring them into the new. And so it is important for you as a leader to be able to do that, to remind them why, to ground them in the purpose. And it multiplies. Why this is important is because it multiplies impact without diminishing individual integrity. So when every person knows what their role is, and they're able to be held accountable, and also it secures them in that role, knowing that they have a place of authority, that they too are governed, and they feel empowered. People work better when they're empowered and trusted that they can do their work. So in this section, anybody, any questions before we move further? Okay, all right. Operating inside complex systems. Now, this one is quite a heavy one, so I hope to say it properly. To reveal it as well as I can. So, modern systems respond first to solutions, okay, before they respond to ideals or beliefs. So, we need to be oriented that we are here to bring a solution to a problem. So leaders who understand this reality learn to add value consistently and visibly. So it has to be consistent and visible, the value that they're adding. Excellence builds trust. This is so important. We need to understand this. Excellence builds trust, and integrity sustains authority. Wisdom creates access within the complex environments. Wherever this wisdom, this statement right here, is for anywhere and everything you'll ever do. If anything, if I can say, each section has its own thing, but this one here is so important. Excellence builds trust. If I can share this, I don't know how I can. I'm telling you, if you can write that down and make it there, put an X on there to say this is important. Excellence builds trust. Integrity sustains authority. And wisdom creates access within complex environments. Wisdom is so hard. These values are so well sought after because they're very rare. But if within yourself, in your leadership, can cultivate these within yourself, I'm telling you, you're going to be very successful. You're going to be. So influence grows when leaders demonstrate competence alongside character. Sustainable impact emerges where internal alignment is matched by external effectiveness. So systems open to those who solve problems rather than merely identify them. So when it comes to your leadership, you need to be able to have a solution. When people come to you, they need to have a solution, not a complaint. They can highlight something, but they need to come with the solution to it, right? And even in yourself, let's say you're in an organization and you have leadership over you, you need to, if you discern a concern, bring a solution to it. It halves the problem. And in fact, it could be that you discerned it because you have the solution. So empower yourself in that and recognize that in those around you too, that when they come with a problem, ask them, how can you solve it? Do you have a solution for it? Yeah, and if not, you can do it as a mentorship moment and say, go back and think about it and come back to me with a solution. Empower them in taking responsibility of what they discern. So I hope this event took place. I don't know if you all remember or have seen it. It was last month when the World Economic Forum took place in Davos, and this meeting, everybody was looking at what President Donald Trump was saying because there was a lot of tension regarding Greenland. However, the main point is that there was a gathering of many, many other leaders talking about very prevalent things that are coming up and the changes that are now taking place in the world. And this is why this particular module and this particular section I am emphasizing for you to pay attention, because now this is how we now can, as leaders, position ourselves for success. And this meeting here shifted everything. It was a whole new dynamics that took place. Everything as we knew before in leadership and nations, and they changed in this moment, in this meeting. So I'm just going to share briefly of what I extracted out of that, so that we can see how now you can implement this wisdom in your own. So wise leaders learn to read systems, not just data. Shifts in economics, governance, and culture reshape leadership landscapes continually. We know that, and it is essential that when you see cultural shifts, it is because of these areas in economics, governance, and the way that culture manifests. So culture becomes that, those changes come about because of these leadership dynamics that have changed. And so those who understand historical patterns are better equipped to interpret present realities and anticipate future change. That's why we looked at Babylon, and we looked at Rome, sorry. Yeah. So we looked at those to discern the patterns, because there's nothing really, if we look at it, we can recognize these patterns, because this is how it tends to be, right? It begins with internal fracture. When a nation is about to destroy itself, is because internally there are fractures. So now, because we can learn from their history, we're able to now sense the patterns that are now, and then be able to strategically align ourselves for what is to come. So those who understand the historical patterns, I'm reading it again, are better equipped to interpret present realities and anticipate future change. So here, let me see if I can move this. So we can see here the presidents. I share these particular people because these are the ones right now in our world, the discussions in news. Russia, how they're partnering with Africa, President Donald Trump, so all these leaders here at the bottom here, everybody, they're part of our leaders in Uganda, in Zambia, the UK, Rwanda, in Middle East. All these leaders, all of them have made major decisions, and they're moving in a certain way, and their decisions are impacting how culture is formed in their environments, in their nations. So wise leaders do not react to headlines. So let's not just look at what the news are saying about particular leaders. Watch them, observe them yourself, go and listen to their interviews, discern what is going on in their thinking, to understand how they're aligning themselves and how you can align yourself to what is happening. So wise leaders do not react to headlines. They discern trajectories, and they look beyond the immediate moment and ask, what is shifting beneath the surface? Like, what is going on here, right? You start to asking yourself in the statements they're making, what is going on? You're asking yourself, what alliances are actually forming now? So you're looking at the networks they're making, the global networks, the shifting of connections. Who are they now partnering with, right? And what values are being strengthened or eroded? So what are the values that they used to hold as a nation that are no longer, working, and what are they adopting? So all of these are part of the culture changes that come into a nation or in our places of leadership. So where is power consolidating? Where is the power shift? Where is the pendulum of leadership power that is in a global scale? And where is influence quietly migrating towards? And so, as well as, remember I said that leadership, even though we are forming ourselves, our leadership, whatever context it is going to be impacted by this greater dynamic that is taking place on the global leadership front. So we need to, understanding the time is intelligence. So we need to be thinking like that, and knowing how to position within it is wisdom. So keys to remember, these are essential keys to remember. Data informs us. So information we learn about how they're leading, what they're doing, and what are their plans and things like that. It becomes knowledge to us, right? So we gain the data, the information, even take this to your leadership in areas, you're gaining the data within your team and things like that to become the knowledge of how you react in your leadership. Discernment detects, it directs us, and which is understanding. So when you now discern, like, okay, this is This is what's happening. This is what's going on. Now you become clearer. You get an understanding. You get clarity on what is actually going on. And so then wisdom positions, yeah? So when we gain that understanding, we gain wisdom from it. And that wisdom, it helps us now to align ourselves. So if we know that this is what they are planning or what's going on, the dynamics that are changing, how can I shift my leadership in order to support my organization to go in the direction that I can still fulfill my purpose, but within these global changes, leadership dynamics that are happening. So mature leadership is not measured by how loudly one responds to global events, but how accurately one interprets them and how intentionally one aligns in response. So in complex systems of politics, economy, organizations, and structure, outcomes are rarely shaped by surface reactions. It's not the daily normal things we hear in the news. It's usually the deep things. They are shaped by those who understand interdependencies, power flow, incentives, and timing. So it's important we do not live in an isolated world. Leaders that want to build things only within their own proximity, they will not last. But we need to understand that we are interconnected and we need each other. So, when we're seeing this and we're discerning these in complex systems like the global world economy and how leaders are making decisions, it all impacts us. So let's say if you have a business and you want to set it up in different nations. Now, you may be used to Zambian or wherever you're located from, the law systems or the systems of Zambia or your country. But when you go international, they have their own. So these are in complex areas and flows. So you need to be educated and informed. You need to gain the data to be able to know, to gain the understanding on how to then get the wisdom on how you should move forward. So it's important. So we are not isolated. We're not individuals here. We are interconnected, and there is also a power flow and incentives and timings that are essential for our understanding in order to move on. So influence belongs to leaders who position themselves wisely within these systems before history makes its own turn visible to anyone else. And now, coming closer to the end, so I call this the Esther principle, which is that we're very used to loud leadership. Leadership, yeah, I'm a leader. We get people that are very assertive about their position. However, there's something very subtle and beautiful about the Esther principle, which is that some of the most powerful influence is exercised quietly rather than publicly. See, leadership is not always visible, and yet its impact can be profound. Timing, restraint, and discernment shape outcomes more effectively than force or exposure. So sometimes it's not within the commandery and the loudness of expression, but it's in the quietness. It's in the conversation with this one person, conversation with another. And then you see that actually you're leading without having to be so expressive about it. And so invisible governance demonstrates that authority does not always announce itself. Influence guided by wisdom often outlast influence driven by visibility. So leaders who understand this principle learn when to speak, when to wait, and when to act. So in summary, now we've got 2 more slides left. So in summary here, alignment begins with honest self-reflection. Leaders must examine the relationships shaping them, the systems they influence, and the wisdom they submit to. Without reflection, misalignment grows unnoticed. So therefore, alignment is maintained through intentional evaluation, not assumption. So you cannot just sit and think, oh, I think it's going well. I'm really actually, I think I'm doing well, because we can be self-delusional, so we need to have intentional evaluations. There are tools for that to be able to do that. So, and growth begins where awareness is welcomed. So, and final alignment final alignment, government leadership that endures. So before influence expands, alignment must deepen. And before systems trust you, your character must stabilize. And before impact scales, relationships must be rightly ordered. So all of these are essential for great global influence. And so global influence is not achieved through ambition alone. It is sustained through disciplined self-governance, relational wisdom, and strategic positioning. And so leadership that lasts is not built on momentum. It is built on alignment. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Any questions? We had some time. We finished on time. At the hotel. So, yeah. It's a lot to think about, but I really want you to reflect on that and what has been shared. But if you have any questions, please do let me know. I'm gonna look into the chat to see if there's any questions I may have missed. So if there's a question in the chat asking, if the vision succeeds, will collaboration be seen as essential or accidental? So purity is a beautiful question you've asked. But remember what we've gone through, yeah? Success cannot happen by itself. It cannot. There is so much you as an individual, as a leader, can achieve. That will be on the development side. So your own self-development and then starting something. So let's say starting a business, there is a lot that you can start as an individual. And that's the toughest. It's hard because you're building the foundations of your organization, of whatever it is that you're doing. So you personally are growing in your intellect, in your emotional intelligence. That means you yourself will be refined in being able to carry that vision. Yeah, and you will have to be the accountant for a while. You have to be the visionary. You have to be the social media person. You have to be the manager. You have to be all these things, because you have not yet had that connection. However, if you are blessed to have people around you already that are supportive and can give you the essential help that at those early stages, then you have already skipped that area. But one of the values I love about taking the time, so like you're building, starting off by yourself, is because the vision is shaping you. It is shaping you. You have to rely on yourself. You have to pull all the resources by yourself to get things going. But that's a harder journey. So, but the wonderful thing to start with is if you have people around you that can support you in the vision, then it'll be wonderful. But definitely, it is not accidental. Nobody falls into success. Nope. And so, yeah, I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Martha. Yeah. So for next week, I have a wonderful session where we're gonna delve deeper into relationships, and how to navigate those elements. And yeah, you gotta come. Invite your friends. Invite those that have not made it. Yeah, and just it's gonna be another presentation like this one, so it'll be nice and visually stimulating. And also I will be adding in the questions. Segments throughout, so that you can process what you're actually listening. I'm about forming you, helping you become the person that you were created to be, and empowering you like this is my desire too. So What strategies do you recommend for dealing with relationships that may be negatively impacting one's personal or professional goals? Well, if it's negatively impacting whoever it is, whether it's yourself, I would say take time to assess whether that relationship is needed. If it is a temporary discomfort, but overall that relationship is required for where you're going, then I say go through the processes of trying to negotiate what's going on and deal with, like, problem solve what's actually underneath the cause of the tension. But if overall this person, the relationship is not useful at all, and you're seeing actually you're giving more than they're giving, you're sacrificing a lot more, there's no feedback, there's no positiveness coming in, I would say reconsider whether that relationship is worth having. You know, remember what I said about networking. You need to be careful of those that are around you, because they will shape your thinking, the decisions you make. And so if this person is negatively feeding to you, it's impacting you already. It is putting you in where your soul is becoming stressed. You know, it brings you emotional burdens, and eventually that's going to cause your decisions to be impacted. You would have to compromise that for that relationship. So you, instead of where you would have said, no, I will not accept this, you end up compromising, thinking, oh, well, maybe, if they become, maybe I just think, you know, so you start, now your decisions are affected because of this relationship. So I hope that you'll be able to take time to reflect deeply and see whether it is worth keeping or not. Yeah. So I have a bunch of books I wanted to recommend. Do you all have time for me to share with you that, or should we end it here? It will take only like 2 minutes or so, but if you want to write, it'll probably take 3 minutes. Otherwise, I'm pretty much done, and I can hand it over to who's leading today, who's moderating. I don't know who, but I have a list of books. Oh, thank you, Purity. I have a list of books, or some books that I have that you can easily get them on Amazon, but they're great for leadership formation. So this is in your own building and becoming a better person, becoming a leader, and the principles are general. So these can be applied in any area of your life and in area of influence. Yeah, should I do that? Who can I say? Who's operating on the Mark Charity Foundation? Am I able to do that? Yeah, okay. Ignatius is saying, yay, share. Okay, I will share. All right, so the first one is called The Ordinary Virtues, Moral Order in a Divided World. Okay, so I don't know, can you see? Let me see. Yeah, is this one? Yeah. So that's the title. It's by Michael Ignatieff. So I don't know where he's from, but it's a very, very good book. It really questions your morals, your values. It works on, navigating how strong are your morals and convictions. And the second one, I don't know if you know about Dr. Mike Murdoch, which is The Making of a Champion. Yeah, so these can be found on Amazon. So 31 Power Keys to Unleash Your Personal Greatness by Mike Murdoch. And one of my favorite books is called Servant Leadership. Yeah, can you see it? Let me see if I can move in a bit. So yeah, Servant Leadership, a journey into the nature of legitimate power and greatness. So this is by Robert K. Greenleaf. Yeah. If I'm going too fast, I can actually repeat these next week, and I'll put them in the chat so that it's easier for you. And the other one is by Dr. Phil Pringle, which is Top Qualities of a Great Leader. Yeah, so Top Qualities of a Great Leader by Dr. Phil Pringle. Very good. And so I'm seeing here without prejudice. We're mostly women here. So this book is called The Power and Purpose of Woman. It's yeah, yes, Martha, isn't it? So the power and purpose of woman. This is important. Like, this book is by Dr. Miles Monroe. Yeah, so this book is important because it really brings down to why we are women, why God designed us as women. What is the purpose of that? And for the gentlemen that are in the room, like Richard and somebody behind Mark Charity Foundation, I'm not sure if it's Abraham, yeah. So the men, maybe in the future visual of rerun of this presentation, there's one called the Purpose and Power of Man. So I couldn't find that one. I do have it, but I think maybe somewhere, But there are two of them. So the Power and Purpose of Woman, and another one which is Power and Purpose of Man. Listen, if you're married, this is something you can give to your husband. Say, listen, you want to know about me here? This is how I was created. So but this is great because for a woman, from a female perspective, is that we have unique qualities, wonderful qualities that we bring into leadership. Leadership is not sexist. It's not for men, it's for everybody as God has given. So when we walk in our identity, we discover that. And so it's wonderful to help us understand that we women are wonderfully created, and that purpose is revealed in this book, and the same for the men. And it's wonderful for us as women to read the one for the men, because it helps us to understand why men are the way they are, so it's very important. And another one that is also very good for your leadership development is The Spirit of Leadership by the same author, Dr. Miles Monroe. Very, very good, important. He has a set of books that are just so power packed with wisdom. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share my book, because this particular book is essential. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I go like that. Yeah. Ancient. So this is called Ancient Paths, God's Hidden Wisdom in Sacred Rhythms. The reason I wrote this is because we live in a multicultural world, especially us in the UK or in the West, where it is they living in a multicultural city, or it brings different values, and the complexities, especially within a church context, because this book is from a church perspective, but can be used in your in your organization. If you can take the principles out to be able and adapt it for your leadership. So it's about worship and how we were created differently so that we can have unique expressions of worship, and how that looks like is expressed through our indigenous cultural expressions. So we are African, most of us here, and so we have our unique expressions, and that subgroup of being African, all the elements were with different tribes, right? So some are from Uganda, then we got from Zambia, whoever else and wherever from, and within that we have clans and different divisions of ethnicity groups, ethnic groups. But it's not a disadvantage. Our differences are not disadvantages. And I want you to apply this principle in your leadership, which is that in your teams of people, you have many different people from different backgrounds. Remember what I say, different perspectives. They'll have different skills and abilities. And if you can harness that as an advantage, if you can see it as an advantage to you and to your organization, you experience such a level of growth and happiness within your organization, because each person will be valued for the contributions they bring. If a person is seeing the diversity that they bring is beneficial and given room to thrive within your organization, is going to benefit you. I'm telling you, it will, because especially there are some people that are very oriented towards helping the sick, or you know, the helping the poor, or you know, they're very passionate about certain things, and it could be in your organization, and you're thinking, why are we dealing with this? This I'm told the purpose is with this, but this person is very passionate about a particular area that seems, you know, unrelated. But if you're to sit down and think and reflect, you can actually see how perhaps that is an area where your organization can be unique. Yeah, so you could be bringing that dimension and perspective to be able to incorporate it in your organization and actually make it work and benefit the wider society. So remember, next week is about how we're going to use these things and skills and abilities and resources around us and the networks on how to bring great impact into society. So don't miss next week. Please do not miss it, because it's gonna, yeah, it's really good. All right, I've chatted enough. I'm done and I'm done. All right, yeah. So really, I want to say bye. I don't know who to say, who's gonna end the session, but I'm grateful. Thank you so much for listening.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, madam.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So as we wrap up today's sessions, we would like to thank you, madam, for sharing your wisdom and practical insights on relationships and purpose alignment. Your time and energy are truly appreciated, madam. Thank you so much. We are looking forward to our next session with you. And I would like to also thank everyone for your participation and engagement. Thank you so much. Okay, bye. I think we can leave the meeting. Thank you so much.
All right, bye everybody. Thank you. Bye. See you next week.
Thank you.